Welcome to the Auditor training for Hours of Service, or HOS. We're going to run through the basics of what you should be looking for, the rules that apply, and some exceptions. Under pressure to cut down on accidents and fatalities involving trucks and commercial carriers, the FMCSA began tracking data to identify ways to reduce these issues. After some study, they attributed a sizable portion of crashes to driver fatigue. To cut down on driver fatigue, they implemented means of tracking driver activity as well as limits on those activities. Logs, otherwise known as Record of Duty Status, or RODs, are the ways that drivers track their daily activities. Each driver is required, except for some very specific exemptions, to complete a daily log, which shows what they've done that day. These logs have been in various forms, but primarily they've either been paper logs or electronic logs. Now, pretty much everyone is on electronic log data, or ELD, after December 17th of 2017. But there are still some people out there who use AOBRDs, which stands for Automatic Onboard Recording Device, and a paper log. All logs contain several necessary pieces of information. Each paper log needs to contain the following items: the name of the driver and their signature, the name and address of the terminal out of which the driver is operating, at least the city and state. It doesn't have to have the actual physical address, but at least it needs to have the city and state out of which the driver was operating. Now keep in mind when auditing that the terminal might be different than the actual main terminal of the company. If a driver operates out of their home, they might be in a different time zone than the main logs that you're auditing for that terminal. You also need the name of the co-driver if applicable, the shipping document number or name of the shipper and commodity, the truck and trailer number, the grid with the daily activities tracked and total hours, as well as remarks. All of these need to be complete and legible for it to be a valid log. Being legible is important, especially when using paper logs. If it is not legible, it could be considered a form and manner violation. The driver's activities are divided into 4 basic categories. These are the ones that you see on the vast majority of logs. And there are some exceptions, and we'll talk about those shortly. First is off-duty. This is any activity that's not work-related. So examples of these are eating in a restaurant, taking a walk, or sleeping. These are not related to work. You're not being told what to do by your employer and when you're supposed to do it. You're doing these things because it's your personal time. A sleeping berth. This is another off-duty activity, but this is very specifically defined as being in the sleeper berth of a truck that obviously has one. You don't have to be necessarily sleeping, but you do have to be in that berth. So you can't be in your sleeper berth and in a restaurant, especially if the DOT is getting particular in that case. Driving. Obviously, this is any time spent driving the truck for work purposes. Now, there are other statuses that you can use when driving for personal reasons, but this is under dispatch. Underload. This includes going back to the terminal or anything that involves working for the company. And then there's on duty, not driving. Now, this is a very broad category, but it's basically anything work-related that isn't driving. So that's inspections, that can be scales, that can be maintenance on the vehicle. It's fueling, especially that's important. It always has to be on duty. Now, it's a very broad category, so there's lots of different things that can fit here. Some other companies include other categories in their logs that you might see. One of these categories is yard moves. That's any time that you were at either a pickup drop-off yard or at your terminal yard and you just need to move the truck for a little bit. Sometimes it's done by other people. You put the truck in yard move first, then you move it, and it doesn't count as an on-duty activity. Rather, it's an off-duty activity. The other one that we see a lot is personal conveyance, or PC. That's using your vehicle as your personal driving vehicle. Originally, if you were at a truck stop and you needed to go to a Walmart to get some soap or some food at a restaurant, something along those lines, and it is only to be used for personal reasons. You cannot further a load. The directions are vague, but it does specifically say you cannot use personal conveyance to further a load. That means you cannot get closer to your destination. If you're on underload, you can't get closer to a pickup point or a drop-off location. You can only use the vehicle for personal reasons. You can use it after your last drop-off to drive home. You can also use it for other miscellaneous things. Like if you have a friend in Arizona and you're driving through Arizona and you're not under dispatch and you just feel like going and visiting them, you can put that in your log as personal. It is an off-duty form of driving, which means you do not have to track it for hours of service, but you do need to say while you're driving that you were in personal conveyance, because if you don't, then an officer stopping you will just assume that you are driving without keeping track of your location.